Today, you're going to step into the world of pure vanilla JavaScript Parallax and all that exciting stuff. Oh, and hey, I'd like to point out this video's awesome sponsor, Skillshare.com, which offers thousands of classes in design, coding, business, and more. You're about to watch my JavaScript tutorial, but you could watch this full JavaScript course at Skillshare. Now, Skillshare is just $10 a month, but if you're the first 200 students to use my very exclusive link below in the description here on YouTube, then you get the first 2 months free. All right, so let's get started. Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Coursetro. So today we're going to take a look at vanilla parallax effects and writing it just in pure vanilla JavaScript. And the reason being, I've been covering a few different scripts that kind of does it for you, but it is important to be able to do this on your own, and you'll find that it is quite easy, all right? So this is the thing that we're gonna be doing here. It just says parallax, and showing you that you can do these in different directions, as well as horizontal and vertical scrolling. And it is dynamic as well, so very useful it will be. And for today's question,
is your head as big as an airplane?
Yeah, they've been wanting to do that forever. So you have to answer the question, is your head as big as an airplane, in the comments. Make sure you subscribe here if you haven't yet, and let's get started. All right, so here I am in Visual Studio Code, free code editor by Microsoft, if I can talk. And I have a empty folder that's open here. And so as we can see, it's blank. Let's create an index.html file. Also a CSS folder with a main.css. I'm not going to use any Sass for this. And then in our index.html, we'll put exclamation point, hit enter, and we have some boilerplate. We're going to do link, and we're going to bind that to our CSS main.css file. We'll just call this vanilla scroll. There we go. All right. So initially, we'll just get the HTML that we're going to use for this demonstration right here. It's only a few lines, and then just a little bit of CSS, and then we'll jump into the primary point of this tutorial. So for our HTML, it's very simple. We're just going to encase everything in a section tag here, and then also an unordered list, and then a list item. And I'm just going to do parallax. It's 9 letters, and it'll work well for the purpose of our demonstration. So to replicate that line like I just did, Shift Alt and the down arrow key 2 times, and then raw, and then lax, as in laxative. All right, no, it's in parallax. And then after that, we'll just do an empty section beneath it, so that'll give us a scroll, because we're going to take this section with CSS and we're going to make it so that it's 100% of the viewport height. So essentially, this will give us a decent amount of scroll to demonstrate the scrolling parallax effect. Save it. We'll go to our main file here, and inside of our main, it's very simple. We're just gonna actually, I will copy in or just paste some quick CSS. I'm not gonna really sit here describing it. It's not pertinent to the purpose of this tutorial. Section is just going to be a height of 100% to make them large enough. And then I'm going to do a grid on our unordered list. This is quite a few properties here, but just a list style type none to get rid of the bullet points, get rid of any default margin or padding on the UL. We're going to use display grid just to make sure that the to organize them. You can also use Flexbox for this to center them up, this parallax, in the vertically and horizontally in a browser. Grid template columns, again, this is also with the display grid right here. All this stuff will just get it all centered up, and the height is 100 viewport height here. And after that, we're not even going to mess with the LI elements. We don't have to do anything with that. And actually, that's it. So I am going to have like a little circle like we saw at the very beginning of this video, and just to demonstrate how we can also apply this effect horizontally as well. So I might as well just put that in. All it is just a span element, and it's just going to make it a black circle that's placed at the bottom left corner. So we're using position absolute, bottom left 0, black, border radius makes it a circle, and we just get an equal width and height. Very simple stuff. All right, So before we begin, we will also right-click, open with Live Server. And this is a Live Server extension, so you'll need to install that. And as you can see, we have our scrolling here and with the default behavior. And is that spelled right? Oh, okay. Apparently I'm an idiot. Hold on one second. I thought that looked wrong. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there we go. Oh man. Okay, I didn't even drink last night either. Like, I don't even know why I would think that. All right. So to get started, we're just going to do JavaScript down here. All right, and the very first thing that we need to do is we have to add an event listener. And there's a bunch of different types of event listeners like clicks, hover states and all that. We want to do one based on scroll. So we do window.add event listener, and we simply put in the first parameter scroll. That's the type of event that we're going to listen for. And if it occurs, we'll execute any of the code occurring inside of these brackets right here. All right. So after that, and apparently, oh yeah, there's an underscore there. It should be a closing parenthesis. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we have to have a way to determine which of these elements that we want the parallax effect to be placed onto. Obviously, you try to place them on all with a consistent the same code or the same rate of scroll differences. It's all going to look the same anyway. So we're just going to place a class on this one right here, and we can give it any class name we want, something relevant. I'm just going to call it scroll. All right. So then in our JavaScript, we have to find a way to target or to find any class that has scroll on it. And we'll make this more dynamic in a little bit, but for now we'll keep it real simple, and we'll just assume we only have one element that we want to make parallax, and essentially. So we'll do a const of a target. We're going to call it target document, and then we're going to do query selector. You can notice that it says query selector and also all. These are two different things, and this one we will use in a little bit, but just for now, because we're dealing with one, we're just going to stick with query selector. So we're just going to put in here, what is it that we want to find? It's a class, so we put a period, and then the name of the class up here is scroll. All right. Now, we still aren't doing anything, so the one thing I want to do is log in the console the target.style property here. All right, so this is only going to occur, we're only going to see something if there's a scrolling that's taking place. So if we go back here and we save it, and we open up Control-Shift-I, the console, and we start scrolling, we can see all this stuff to the right. And we see in there is CSS style declaration. All right, if we open this up, we're going to see a massive list of what are essentially CSS properties, but they don't look exactly like your typical CSS property. They're in camel case. So margin hyphen left, which is all lowercase in CSS, actually looks like margin no hyphen with a capital L right here for left, and that's how these all are. So we have access to all of these properties, and we have the ability to set them in JavaScript. Okay, so the one that we want to set is going to be translate 3D. All right, so if we go to the T's, we'll see we have, transform. That's the transform property that we want, and the value that we want to set is translate 3D. And you'll see how this works momentarily. But just as a quick demonstration, we could do something like this. We could say target.style dot, I don't know, maybe background, and then we'll say equals, and then we'll just make it FFCC00. I think that's like an orange color. So let's save that, and it's only going to change it when we scroll, or at least I thought it was. I think because we already had that open, that occurred. So watch this. Oh, very, very simple, right? So you understand that now you can change the CSS properties through JavaScript based on these event listeners that we have. And there's a million that you can change, and there's also a lot of different event listeners. In our case, this is a scroll, but if we want parallax, we're going to change the transform property. So with that in mind, we can get rid of this console log as well. We can go ahead in here and we can say target.style.transform, this time instead of background. And then in this section, we'll put in translate 3D. And we'll say 0 pixels on x-axis. We'll just hard code 50 pixels right here on the y. And we'll save it. We'll come back. Now watch what happened. Automatically, once we started to scroll down, it drops it 50 pixels from its current state. Now that's obviously not parallax, but I wanted to just demonstrate how that works. So what we need to do is find a way to determine, the amount of pixels that the scroll bar has currently scrolled, and somehow apply a simple mathematic formula for determining the rate at which this will scroll in either a negative or positive direction. So basically, we have to get what's called a window page Y offset for that. All right. So, for instance, if I console log window.page Y and then offset, we'll see once we start to scroll, if we get out the console, we'll see all these values. All right. So now that we have that, instead of console logging it, we'll create a variable bound to it, and we'll just call this var scrolled. So that equals window page Y offset. And by the way, we'll get rid of this as well. Let's copy that though. And then we'll say var rate equals scrolled, which is defined on the line above, and we'll multiply it maybe by 0.5. All right, so now if we do target style transform, instead of just hard coding a value in here, we're going to put in our rate just like that. And also we have to put, don't forget this, a pixel at the end, px, right there. All right, so we'll save, and then there we go. We can see it is moving, but not at the same default rate as the rest of these without the scroll class attached to it. So what's really cool is we can also, we can really speed it up, maybe to 2. And so let's refresh. All right, so we can also even put in a negative value. We save that, go back, and look at that. So now we have full control using negative or positive values on these. Now here's the thing, right now if we tried applying a second class onto this, maybe we'll do it on the last one, and we save it, we'll see that it doesn't work for the second, and this is where query selector all will come in. All right, so we're going to slightly change things up just a bit. All right, so for this, we're going to change our query selector to query selector all. That's the only thing that has to, oh, wow, hit the L, scary. All right, and now what we'll do is we have to iterate through these with a for loop. All right, so we'll say for, no, first, before that, we're going to say var index equals 0. And this is all for JavaScript 4 stuff you'll see in a second. And the length or the amount of classes that it finds will be target.length. And remember, target is right here set on this scroll element. So it's just means counting all of them. And then we'll do our for. And then we can simply put our index or just leave that blank. And then index is less than the length. So it only iterates through the amount that it needs to, and then index plus plus, and that will increment the value. And you'll see how that works in a second. All right, so inside of it, what we're going to say is var, we'll say POS, position, window.page, y offset. We're doing the same thing we did above, times. Now this time, instead of hard coding an actual rate in there, like we're doing right here, like -2, well, if you want to make it dynamic, then we can use a custom data attribute for this. So what I mean, and we're just going to leave this hanging for a second, is to make this more dynamic and flexible, then we can just define a custom data, and we'll say data hyphen, and then whatever you want to name it, data hyphen rate. And we'll say this time, this is where we're going to define it in the actual HTML. So we'll say 2 right here. All right, so we can retrieve this value from data hyphen rate in our JavaScript by simply referencing at the bottom here, target. All right, and then we pass in the key here, and that's going to be based on the index because that's being incremented right here. So for the very first one, it would be target, get the first target, which would be 0 in a sense. And then we'll say .dataset, and then we have access to the names or whatever data has been defined in that HTML element, and you exclude the data hyphen. So this would just be rate. So .rate right there. And then after that, we'll go ahead and put in target.index. And we set it just as we have done before. So style, transform equals, and then let's just go ahead and copy this stuff so we don't have to repeat it. This will change from rate to POS right there. And voila. So now we can get rid of these few areas right here. So let's save that. And there we go. So now if we change this to a -2, we'll see it goes in the opposite direction. Just like that. So now we can make this work, except this time we do need to also specify the rate. So we'll put just a regular +2 on there. And look at that. How easy. Awesome. So you can, as you can see, you can extend this even further. You can add multiple data attributes. For instance, let's say if you want one of them to be able to scroll maybe horizontally. So in that case, what we would do is we could say data direction equals vertical. And maybe this one. In fact, let's do our span element right here. We'll do it right here, span, just an empty span tag. So if we save it, because we already defined the CSS, we'll get that ball down there. And let's say we want that direction to be horizontal. So let's first add our class, the rate and direction, onto our span element. Say horizontal. All right. And for this, I think we'll put 2. And let's say, for instance, we want to be able to control both the X and the Y value of a horizontal scroll, for instance. We could do data rate Y, and then also a data rate X. And for the data rate X and Y, the Y would be, let's just make this 1. And then also the X can be 2, as it is. And then we have to just do a few if statements here to determine, if the data direction is vertical versus horizontal. We'll place this here as well. Then do something. So what we'll do is, let's see here. We'll go ahead and we'll say if. We're going to put an if right here. if the target index data set dot direction, remember it's data hyphen direction, so we just use direction, is equal to vertical, then we'll keep this one right here. All right. And then we'll say else, we'll do else. Yeah, we'll just say else right here. And then we'll say on this one, we'll copy this. And we will say for this one, it's going to be position X. So plus position X, and that's a variable that we're going to define momentarily, px. And then we get rid of this one here. We have our comma right there, and then we put another right here, position Y, px. There we go. And then we're going to define a var of pos x, window at page Y offset, and it'll be multiplied by target index dot dataset dot rate x. Now notice rate x right here I defined as being uppercase. They're going to be lowercase here. So rate x, and I'll say that we'll replicate that Y line right there, position Y, and then Y, just like that. And this allows us to get control over, there's probably a better way, by the way, to structure this, but I was just doing kind of off the cuff here. So this will give us the rate of a position Y and X so that we can modify them independently instead of just using a single data rate like that. So now if we save it with any luck, it will work. And it's staying vertically at the bottom because we set, I believe we set the Y to 1. All right, so if we set that to something else like -1, it's going to be quite different. It's going to move more in a diagonal. Just like that. Awesome, awesome stuff. But I'm going to save that, and this is my intended effect. Great. All right, so hopefully you found that useful. Make sure you answer today's question, which is your head as big as an airplane, in the comments here. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.